put out a question on my story recently, and I asked, what is something that prevents you from doing the things you want to do in life? And one answer that came back was overthinking. And I really wanted to sit down and think about this and talk about this because I'd like my reply to be helpful. First of all, to the person who sent that reply, I'm going to keep this anonymous, but I want to say thank you for sharing that. That takes a lot of courage to tell someone that you're struggling with overthinking. And also, I want you to know that you're not alone. I've definitely suffered from overthinking. And that was something I had to actively recognize and actively start to work against. And now it's a lot more freeing for creativity because fortunately I've got past that. But it has taken a long time. And it is something that we have to actively do consistently. Now I practice a sort of habit, a mantra, and I call it progression over perfection. And this was something that I have to actively practice. And I have to actively work against overthinking and work towards progression over perfection. And this is something that I really consciously had to do. And I had to really recognize what I was doing when I was overthinking and why I was doing this. One of the things with overthinking is that we really have to identify what it is that we're doing. What is this thing that we've named overthinking? Is it destructive procrastination? Is it worrying about the details? Is it anxiety? Is it micromanaging? Is it us trying to create perfection? And often if we follow this to the source and we really become open with ourselves, we have to understand that this all comes from a place of fear. This all comes from an insecurity, a lack of confidence. It's a fear of being judged. It's a fear of putting ourselves out there. So we overthink all the details because we're trying to micromanage the things that we perceive as potential failures. The what if it doesn't do as well as I want it to do? What if it doesn't get the numbers that I want it to do? What if it doesn't make the money that I need it to make? And as a response to that, we try to create perfection. And we try to create perfection because we think if we create perfection, it will receive the best possible outcome that we want it to have. It will receive the best possible response that we want it to have. But the thing here, and the thing to really understand about trying to create perfection or creating perfection, is all we're actually creating is control. Creating perfection is creating control. But when we do that, what's actually happening is that we're making decisions based on fear, not based on the faith that this will be great, the faith that it will be fine. And, the most important, the faith that this is another step in our journey of progression to get to do the things that we want to do in life. And by overthinking and attempting to micromanage all the areas that we perceive as potential failure, you actually end up stopping yourself from releasing the greatness that you've always wanted to release. And that was, and still, and will always be, the overriding goal, to share the greatness that you have inside you and to continue on this path of greatness. And that is whatever you choose it to be. One of the things you have to understand, and why you can't beat yourself up about this, and you can't put yourself down for overthinking, because this is something that our brain has been programmed to do. On a neurological level, what's happening is our brain is trying to save us. Your brain will say, no, don't go do that thing because it's comfortable here. So keep staying here and do this thing. It's very comfortable. And when you do that thing that's very comfortable, it will reward you. And your brain is only doing this to protect you, and because there's a reward system in place. So one of the things you have to actively do is you have to start doing the things that are outside of your comfort zone. And if you do that consistently, your brain will start to reward you for doing those things. At first, it will try to fight you on it. And this is why it can be very hard, because your brain will try to fight you on it, because it will say, why are you doing this? This is now uncomfortable, and it won't want to reward you. And it will say, come back to the comfort zone because it's all good here. We know what happens here. Everything's good here. Let me reward you for that. And when you start to go, it will say, why are you changing this? Why are you changing this? Everything was all good. But the most beautiful thing about this is that our brains are not solid. Our brains change. Our brains are not one fixed shape. And the more you start to do things that are outside of your comfort zone, your brain will then say, hey, this is actually really good. And you've done this thing and it feels good. Let me reward you for that. And then your brain will start to create a new rhythm. And if you do this on a consistent level, on a habitual level, what will happen is, on a neurological level, you will reprogram your brain. The way to work against overthinking is that you have to start doing the things that you've always wanted to do, and you have to do them consistently. And I understand this can be very hard. And one of the key things in this is you have to not worry about any of the negative responses that you perceive that you will receive, or that you may receive, or, the lack of interaction online. You have to do this because it's part of your purpose in this stage of life. And whether that is sharing photography online, starting a cooking show, releasing a music video, starting a business, or having a needed conversation with a family member or a partner or a friend or a colleague. The more you do this consistently and without the need for a measurable response, the easier it will get and the better you will get at doing it. And then the less you will overthink about these things. And the main thing here that you really have to understand is that you are worthy of doing this, and you don't need permission to do this. It is your journey, and it is something that you want to do to develop on this journey in your life.